the instrument, I have to demonstrate it as simple as possible so that you can follow a certain guide when you develop the instrument. With regards to instrument, the most common difficulty is basically on uh, where they will start doing the instrument and what will they start with, no? So it's something that they're very confused and very conflicted, no? But what is an instrument, by the way? So an instrument or a tool is basically uh, these may be our surveys, these may be our questions, but in this discussion, it's going to be survey or statements, no, or a scale. Its use is basically to get the information that you need for your research. You need to have the authentic and real information in the field, no, from the field. By having them answered by your respondents, no, the identified respondents. It will identify or validate the what or the topic of your research. Okay, so let's move on. Uh, okay, when you develop a tool, you're basically categorizing the topic or subject. Like for example, decision-making skills, you will have to categorize different decision-making skills. Okay, so later on, we will have a more broken down example. Then topic subject should be on a specific area. So it's not just a skill, just like what I've said. It has to be decision-making skills. And you can still break it down. Okay? I-break down pa natin. One is measurable. The other point is measurable categories. No? They need to be measurable categories. No? You can make statements pertaining to it. No? Uh, it should not be uh, you cannot make statements that are or you cannot measure something that you already know is true, no? Like for example, the sun is or saan bang sun? West or east? I mean, you cannot have that. That's already something that we know, no? Ano pa ba? That child labor is bad. I mean, you cannot have those statements already. They are already defined and clearly proven to be true. Okay? So it has to be measurable. So later on, you will see anyway. The other one is provide statement in each category. Okay. So for example, decision making skills, there are 4 to 5 categories. By proving each of those categories, you need to provide statements under it to prove that category, no? So that when they answer those statements or respond to those statements, it pertains to the category and will prove that the category is whether the list is true, that this is an effect. For example, if you're talking about the effect or economic effect, no, that this is happening to them, no. So you provide statements, no. For example, one of the economic effect could be lesser uh, lesser income in a day, no? So maybe some statements could be, I used to have 1,000 pesos of income, but now it's reduced to 1 to 500 pesos, no? That kind of statements, which pertains to a certain category, economic effect, no? Effect on income, for example, is the category. Then, the other one is one thought in each statement. So, one of the statement, if you construct those statements, make sure that each of the statement is only saying or stating one idea. No? So, you cannot make, for example, I am losing 50% of my income during the pandemic, as well as I feel sad. No? So, just one statement. You cannot make two ideas in one statement, because what if the respondent is telling you that he is sad but his income uh, uh, did not decrease, no, or decline. So you have two very conflicting response there, so you have to be very specific. Okay, let's go to the breakdown of the decision making skills of hospitality management graduates. So there are 5 skills that was identified by this author, no? Problem solver, leadership skills, motivator skills, swift decider, someone who can decide quickly. And customer feedback satisfaction on providing solution, very responsive to the customer feedback. So there. So these are already categories. If you would notice, we identified already the what, right? It's about the decision-making skills of uh, hospitality management graduates. So the researcher have identified different decision-making skills. So these are the categories, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after that, you're going to make statements from each of these category. Here it is. So problem solver, leadership, motivator, swift, and customer. What's the ideal number of statements in each category? Ideally, is five. No, ideally is five. So you can still add from these categories the number of statements that you can have. Okay. Uh, Make sure that each of these statements pertains to the category. Like for example, let's go with problem solver. I ask the root cause of the problem. No, he asked the client. No, just make it very specific so that it pertains to a certain situation. The other one is I attempt to give solution to the problem. No, so the other one is I listen to the complaint of the guest or customer. Next one is if solution is not found, I offer temporary solution. Right? So this pertains to problem solver. And be very, very mindful also of using pronoun I or we, because remember that when the respondent answers this question, he should feel that he is the one that is being asked. No? So you use the word I. Compared to a statement, the root cause of the uh, asking the root cause of the problem versus I ask the root cause of the problem, the person would feel that he needs to personally respond to this statement because he thinks that he is that person. No? So that's why you use the word I, we, etc. No? Okay, what's the good thing about doing the instrument? Actually, we have different styles of doing research. For me, what I need to have is basically a working title or a problem, no? And then from the problem, I can already make an instrument. So that's what I do. That's my process. Because anyway, the problem can be turned into a title later on. So what's the good thing about making your instrument, no? Or creating the categories? First, the categories becomes your structure for the statement of the problems or research objectives, right? So things are becoming very easy. So these categories becomes your statement of the problem. The second is, it is the structure of your introduction and literature, right? So there are so many people, students, and other researchers who find it very difficult to do or write the introduction and literature. But if you have your instrument already ready, and you've done already your statement of the problem based on the instrument, of course, they all came from the identification of the problem or constructing a question, then it's easy for you to write about the introduction and literature because first, you know how to to have a flow, no? With your introduction. You know your gap, you know the background that you have to research onto, and you know the ingredients of the research or the variables that you need to find some background, no? In the introduction, in writing the introduction. That's the flow. The question or the statement of the problems or objectives are basically the flow of your introduction and literature. Okay? And much more about literature. Because all of the problems in the statement of the problems will have to be present in terms of structuring your literature, right? It has to be defended and corroborated or maybe aided by different information, findings, studies by different authors. So you already have a structure already if you know the questions. Okay? Again, another benefit is that number three, it is the flow of your methods. Like treatments, no? Each of those statements of the problems have different treatments or methods of gathering information, no? Like for example, profiles of the respondent, you do survey through profile, gathering the profile information, right? If you want to understand the effects, then you need to have a survey on the effects, right? Another one is uh, if you want to identify, for example, mm, what mental health effects, no, not mental health effects, maybe what products are being considered to be a priority when low income people or population buy products for their needs, no? What do they prioritize now? Is it still the basic goods, or even the health products are getting a pie of the products from the basic needs? Do they have the same priority right now? Right? So you gather, what do you call that? Maybe a mapping survey or identification survey. So we don't know, no? Some treatments are really different, or methods in gathering information are different based on the problem, or based on the what is being asked in the statements of the problem. So there, that's the guide. So let's try. So these are the possible research question or statements of the problem, no? So the first one is, we're using, by the way, the decision-making skills of the hospitality management graduates. I hope I got it right. So the first question is, what is the profile of the respondents in terms of gender, economic status, type of school, number of years in training? So the first question, these are things that are decided, no? Basically, we call this profile or demographic profile, no? It's the researcher who will decide, no, depending on the relevancy of the profile. So maybe if you're talking about the manage decision making skills, yeah, I think I agree with gender, because we will measure whether is it the women or is it the men who does very good, has better decision making skills. Or maybe economic status, maybe are poor students or coming from private schools, or from public or private schools, for example, or poor or richer students have better decision making skills. I'm not sure, no? Maybe the researcher have decided to get this profile, no? So you have to really think also if it's really compatible, or it fits, no? Then the other one is type of school, no? So maybe it talks about hospitality management graduates from private school or from public school. Then number of years in training, no? Like if you're a graduate of HRM or HM, hospitality management, how many years after graduation, if you are in the field already like for 10 years or 5 years, are you better off in terms of those who just graduated 1 or 2 years? Okay? So there, that's the first profile question. First question, no? Next is, what are the level of decision-making skills in terms of? Okay, so this is the what already, no? So it's easier to understand because you understood, you have identified as your problem the decision-making skills. So you felt that HM graduates, when they were preliminarily interviewed in their work, that based on feedback, they don't have very sound decision-making skills. So you wanted to prove if maybe the school can offer subjects that will enhance, no, decision making skills. So the question is, what are the level of decision making skills in terms of? So since this is already in your tool, so it's easy for you to map it out, no, the what. So basically, within the context of your title, the variables, you know already what you want to ask, no, in the for the research questions or statements of the problem. Of course, because this is quantitative, is there a significant difference? Because you have your profile, by the way. Is there a significant difference of the decision-making skills when the respondents are grouped based on their profile? Okay, so that's A, B, C, D. So number 3 is definitely a required question, given that you have a demographic profile question. Then number 4, it's up to you, no? If you want to stop with number 3, then it's okay. But this one, The researcher want to find out, based on the results, what intervention can be developed to improve the level of decision-making skills of the hospitality management graduates. So there, so you have a very efficient guide in doing your tool, in identifying your problem, and constructing your research questions or statements of the problem. So that ends our session already. These are some of the. Wait, let's go back. Okay. Okay, these are some of the titles that we had with our workshop. Risk in online learning, effects on the students' mental health and behavior. You have risk, mental health, behaviorship, and coping mechanism. Assessing demographic utilization of online and physical library services. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no, categories. So you can decide which categories you want to use. No? Okay, parts of doing the introduction, then literature review. Okay, see, there's already guides no, when you do these things. Okay, these are just some of the samples. Maybe you can screenshot them. Different methods, no? So question number one, these are the instruments. So for question number one, inventory questionnaire. So that answers, I think the title for this research is uh, on identifying and mapping out uh, uh, practices of halal food restaurants, no, in Region 9. So their first instrument is being answered by the inventory questionnaire. Then next is survey of the halal practices, interview questions because there's a quali part. So in the methods, guys, in the methodology, in the instrument part, you have to itemize the statement of the questions and what method are you going to use. Is it a survey? Is it an interview questions? Is it a mapping instrument, etc.? Is it a focus group discussion? And other forms of methods in gathering information. So, of course, every research is always a work in progress. You will always have questions along the way. And, you know, the best thing about doing research is you ask questions. Okay? So, thank you very much for listening. And I hope you've learned a lot. And you can always review the things that have. Okay, we're gonna go now with research problem. So we're gonna try to discuss about research problem. So we're gonna be very specific right now. The first is you have economic adaptation of displaced women educators during pandemic. So this is basically a needs analysis. No, we want to find out what happened to the displaced educators' adaptation no, during pandemic. So the other one is COVID-19 pandemic as a negative effect on the mental health and well-being of the students. So I think that's really a problem, no? So these first two statements are really important problems to tackle. So that's how they identify the problem. The first is on the economic aspect of women educators because I think this is very important when there was massive layoff no because of the pandemic especially on private schools, especially I think there's about like over 400 schools nationwide who stopped or suspended their operations. So in the public school there's lesser problem because of course their salaries are paid by the government, so it's consistently being delivered through their ATMs. Well, the private school, they're the most affected, no? Especially those teachers who are in the private sector, in the private schools, no? The other one is the mental health, no? So yeah, I mean, even if you speak to your friends, you speak to your family and classmates, there are really stories that tell you uh, they kind of feel different during these times because it's something new. it is something that they experience for the first time. So you really expect that there are disruptions in terms of their mental health, no? Like for example, how they cope with worries, for example, how they cope with health protocol. I mean the effect of having to follow health protocols, having to pay, for example, fines if they're caught not wearing certain masks, or even how to to go along in a day, no? Like I don't have load, for example. I cannot go to my class. So what do I do, right? And in fact, there are some students who stop going to school. Students who consider many other decisions, no? Maybe they're depressed, or maybe they have some other factors that affect them. So technically, these are problems. No, from these problems, I'm sure there are many researches or many studies that can be conducted. So technically, if you look around, it's easy to find the problems that you can research on. Okay. Okay, we'll skip into the heavy metals. I think these are natural problems, no? Especially mga diseases, things like scientifically there are missing facts or things that you need to solve, because if they are not going to be solved, they may pose some risks or hazards, no? Okay, so uh, you have to state the research question in order for you to start up your research, no? For example, the COVID-19 pandemic is a negative effect on the mental health and well-being of the students, then that already is a statement. It's a problem already, no? Like assessment difficulty, teachers do not know how to assess properly. Maybe students do not know where to run if if they if they're very uncomfortable with, online education. So you pose the question, no? How COVID-19 affects the mental health and well-being of the students. From that one question, you can already do your research, no? Because from that one question, you can already break down what are the things that you can find out from that very one question. Okay? So later on, we're gonna be understanding it more on how to do it. So this time it's just plainly on identifying the problem and constructing a question about it, no? Because from the question, you know that you have to answer the question this way. It's the how, or maybe it's the what, okay, etc., etc. And some other questions. So the what, there's a how. What are the negative effects of COVID-19 to the students? How are the students responding to the government's restriction? So the what, the how here is basically, I mean, how COVID-19 affects the mental health. It's maybe the consequential reaction of students, if we're going to talk about students, of uh, of of pandemic. If it's mental health, how? So it may be like resulting to some form of depression, resulting to lesser productivity, no? Manifestations. So what are the negative effects? So this is like enumerating or listing or validating the list of the negative effects. How are the students responding to the government restriction? uh, there are protocols, there are rules that if we don't follow, we're gonna be penalized. Excuse me, penalized. So how are students responding to this restriction? Right? So this is also some forms of actions, some forms of responses, no? So it answers the question of how. How do they respond? Okay. When you talk about identifying problems and forming questions, we need to be reminded of these three things, no? Because research, although it's a very, very valuable undertaking, very important aspect of finding knowledge and contributing knowledge to uh, the body of works in this world in terms of knowledge and information. But three things has to be reminded of. First is feasibility. So when you talk about feasibility, it talks about time. No, do you have the time to do it? Do you have the funds to do it? Are there respondents for it? Then the facilities needed and the methodologies. No, so these are things that you have to think on because you cannot do it without these things. Okay, the feasibility. Maybe you wanted to, if you are a student for now, uh, if you don't have funds, well, it's kind of difficult if you want to study the correct, the correct or uh, discovering or inventing vaccines or other instruments to combat uh, the COVID-19 pandemic, no? Uh, so it's kind of difficult if you don't have resources. So that thing is you have to at least reflect whether that's even feasible or not, no, at your certain situation. Okay, if you belong to a big company, then it's possible. But if you're a student, then you have to think twice, no, first. Or maybe, of course, there are some other actions like you can do proposals and intentionally propose it to other companies or agencies, no. But then I'm just trying to demonstrate that feasibility involves many other things, no. So significance, okay. For example, if you're yes, you're feasible, you can do it. Very much, it's something that is doable. But then, is it something significant, right? Because you're going to spend time, money, you're going to meet a lot of people or at least analyze, and it requires energy and analysis, no? So, is it something that is significant, something that you can apply in the real world, like in teaching, no? Does it make it easier or does it make the student's life easier? Or when you process your business permit, will it make them feel that it's convenient, etc. No? Are you feeling a gap? Is it something contributory to a certain field like linguistics or biology? Right? So consider significance. Okay. The next one is researchable. Although it's the least, no, for me, of importance because the fact that research is something that is supposed to be new, no, you have to research. So, but of course, researchability, like, uh, if you wanna find, maybe you have to consider, like, if you wanna find out something, do you have other references, for example, or can you, like, because research, you need some forms of validation to some extent, no? Can you find them? Do you have uh, materials, for example, or resources for validation or to corroborate information? So there, no? So you have to also think about that, the researchability of your problem. So if one of these is failing, then you have to rethink, no? Whether the problem or the question that you're asking is something that is worth pursuing, no, for a research. So these are the references.